Thank you for joining us. This is Brave New History. We're talking about Manichean origins of the Quran here with our friend and guest, Gnostic Quran. How
Yeah.
are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine. But last night, at least for me, it was a night I spent about spent time researching the stuff about the connection. I had these ideas before, but I started to investigating in terms of language, and when I found out uh, that in the most cases, for example, the Surah 56 is heavily mistranslated, heavily when it comes to the what as I often called as a tripartite distinction in Islam, and which is very similar to Manichaeanism. So we're definitely gonna discuss it today. Yeah, and if the audience has any questions, they can ask that obviously, because it's always a sad state of affairs when at the end of the stream there's a little questions. So I'm gonna share the screen for now. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to prepare the presentation, but I have some scribbles in my Word document, so I'm gonna share it for now. Present, share screen. Okay.
All
Hope
right,
it's
we will
hope it's
see
gonna work.
the scribbles here.
Yeah, and this is the quotation of, I don't remember, as far as I know, it's from Augustine, when he reports about the Roman Rite Manichaeanism. And would strike me that in some Arabic uh, reports about the Mani, he described the spirit of the darkness, which here is identified with some sort of a violent winds, the corruptible region where this spirit of darkness reside, and in Manichaeism it's female, interestingly enough, horrible female chief and leader of all. In Arabic, the name of this chief was the Humama, and Manichaean Humama is very similar to the Quranic Hamimin, or maybe Hamima, if we just stripe away this little lines or the tashkil from the text. If this line is below, it would be Hamimin, but if the line would be above, it would be Hamiman. Or else, as for, and this is from the Quran, as for the ones who used to deny, for them is the drink, and that's questionable because well, sharaba in even in Hebrew it denounced some scorched place. Maybe this kind of drink stuff was a later development within the Arabic language. And but for example, even the English word syrup is coming from the Arabic through Latin. And yeah, الذين كفروا لهم شراب من حميم. As for the ones who used to deny this kafara, oh, there's some attestation even in some sort of a Syriac or Aramaic New Testament when it used exactly to denounce this, to deny. For them is the drink or the scorched place from the hamima. So in the Quran, it is the basically the deepest hellish realm, which is interestingly.
So that's a direct reference to Manichaeism.
Maybe, yeah. But I think, yeah, especially given the fact that this is most probably Aramaic in origin, this kind of name which Mani used for this female demon. So, and Arabic and Aramaic in that case would follow the similar, like the similar, like root. similar with verbal construction. And hamama, as you can see, in Arabic, Hebrew, and Aramaic means exactly the same, to be hot. And this is the quotation from the Genesis. And harvest and cold and heat, this is ahom, and summer and winter. What is interesting is that in the Quran, you can also see this kind of association with the smoke. In one of the verses of the Quran, it's straightly translated as the smoke. وَظِلٍّ مِنَ يَحْمُومٍ. And this yahmumin translated as a smoke in the classical, like Sunni or even the Shia translation, you will see that. And dhillun, you can also translate as a shadow. You can translate it as a darkness, some dark place. Obviously, sometimes it can have a positive connotation, because in nomadic culture, when like 24/7 there's the sun heat, the shadow under the tree would be the saving place for many. And it's not obvious that it refers to boiling water, this hamama, because oftenly it's either translated as the boiling water or just straightly from Arabic, like without any translation. And you may well translate it as a smoke, especially in this example, because it's hard to ascertain that you can associate this kind of boiling water with a dhillun, with a shadow, whilst the smoke and darkness is all like very often associated with each other. And that was problematic verse, I think. If not that, they wouldn't even dare to translate this such way. I mean, the Sunni exegetes. And I think it was deliberately mistranslated later on to just remove any traces of Manichean ideology within the Quranic corpus, because as you can see, this Mu'tazila movement, it was the first movement to appear on the political scene of the Abbasid Caliphate, when this kind of theological schools emerge. And this is basically the first orthodoxy within Sunni religious tradition, even though they often declare to be this kind of super rational movement within Islam, but still they were adherent to what is called the Sunnah, the tradition. And let's continue with what I call the tripartite distinction of the humanity. In the Manicheanism, society divided into the three types of people. In that sense, the auditors, the ones who adhere to the next type of people, the electi, who are basically the monk community, which through the like some rigid ascetic practices and the ritual purity enter the heavenly worlds. The second type of people, the auditors, they are the ones who are gonna be reincarnated, and they are actually in the Manichean community, in Manichean scheme of the society. They are the ones who bring the food for the monks, because it is sinful for the monk to harvest any type of food, whether it's gonna be some animals or just plants, because it's deemed to be it's a sinful act. It's hardcore vegetarian or even veganism in Manichaeanism going on. And the third type of people is just the non-Manichaeans, those who do not adhere to the Manichean tradition. And this one ultimately go to hell. And this is from one of the books, a translation of Fihrist of Ibn al-Nadim. Ibn al-Nadim was the 10th century scholar who basically was a bibliographer who had a lot of tons of book about different subjects, and he created some sort of a short script about the beliefs of other people who surrounded this Buyid Caliphate at that time. And he actually says that, as you can see, that there's three ways of the elect, heroes, and sinners. First being to paradise, the second to the world, and to terrible things, and the third ultimately to hell. And similar distinction can be seen in one of the description of Zoroastrian priest Kardir, who was the enemy of the Mani, who was his like religious rivalry, and who was responsible for the death of the prophet Mani, because he basically organized it within this kind of court system, and there was a big religious struggle within the third century Sasanian Iran. And here's a rough translation of this inscription. There is the heaven and there is the hell. Whosoever will do shall go straight to hell, to heaven, and whosoever is a sinner shall be cast down to hell. And whosoever may be virtuous and behave well with regard to good deeds, renown and prosperity will befall his material body. And the last part is obviously about the reincarnation process. But the ones who was like mediocre, he will gonna into this kind of reincarnation process. It would be mad to imagine where Mani get this. It's straight away from the Zoroastrian tradition. In the Quran, we will find the following verses, and this is from the Surah 56. As you can see, I can share the screen from the Quran.com. It's just the classic, the first link in the Google. And we will start from this verse, 56, verse 7. Even here it's translated, at least part of the ayah of the verse translated correctly. You will be divided into the three groups, as you can see, this kind of classical translation, but it's actually fraudulent translation, because this particular noun here denounces the pairs, not kinds. Azwaj or zawaj, it's simply translated roughly as the pair, and within the Quranic corpus, it's used for the wives or for the spouses, but definitely not in some sort of a modern sense of like marriage or something like that. So let me share the corpus Quran, so we can see that I'm not lying. 56 verse 7. As you can see, azwajan, throughout the corpus, it's mostly used to denounce the pairs. Pairs, spouses, wives, husband, and kinds are always translated within this kind of theme of the like some sort of apocalyptic theme, where it describes how it's gonna be on the day of the judgment. Pairs, wives, but even spouses you can roughly translate as the pairs. So you will be divided into the three pairs, thalathatu, three. The next verse, the people of the right, how blessed will they be? فَأَصْحَابُ al-maimanati ma ashabu al-maimanati. So the classical translators, they basically take this part of the verse as the question. So that's why they start with a how. The sma can indicate the start of the question. But in most of the cases, just translated as what, as it's presented there. But let's get to my scribbles. The next verse introduced the first pair, basically. Then fa. Fa particle indicate the connectivity with the previous clause. Then to the companions, and this classical translation, then the companions of the right. What are the companions of the right? It's basically doesn't make any sense because you would suggest that the next verse would be describing these companions of the rights, but the next verse is just simply like the similar to this, but it just says about the companions of the left, as you can see. To the people of the left, how miserable will they be, even though this kind of words, blessed, miserable, it's not there. It's just addition of the tafsir tradition or exegetical tradition. It just doesn't exist in the original text. So what I suggest that what I'm suggesting that here it's just basically described as pairs. The second part of the verse is taken as a question, but it's obviously from previous verse that it is about the coupling, the pairing, and different coupling spiritual twins is essential in the Zoroastrian tradition. The whole divine twin tradition within the Manicheanism was the crucial one. Even considering the fact that maybe some of the stuff are also present within so-called bridal chamber tradition within some sort of a Gnostic or Oriental Orthodox school of the Christianity. So for the companions of the right, there will be companions of the right. That would be a literal translation of this verse actually. If we do not tap dance and think that this is somehow starting the question. And this part is just the soul of the obviously deceased person. And this part is some sort of a spiritual guardian who is attached to this particular type of person, because there's obviously different personalities described, 3 types of people. The next verse says something similar, but it actually states wasabikuna sabikunan. There is a whole lot of debate what could it mean, the sabaka, even in the, as far as I know, like last time I watched the Russian-speaking rabbi Rav Finkel, and he's like, as far as I know, good friend with the Tovaya singer, and there was a big controversy about the passage in the New Testament where Jesus on the cross saying that, "Oh my God, why did you forsake me?" And in the Aramaic, it is spelled sabachni, exactly the same root as it's in Arabic here. But in the Hebrew, it's azabtani or something like that. And there's the whole like debate, like it's just some sort of a mistranslation of the New Testament writers of the psalmic passage, because it also appears in Psalms with the word azabtani. But roughly speaking, sabaka means to leave or to forsake, to leave behind. In Arabic, it mostly translated as the first one or the fastest one, because he is the one who leaving others behind. So it could denote the first ones or the foremost ones, as it's translated classically. As you can see, in the foremost will be foremost, and this is not present, obviously. When you see this kind of I know brackets, it just means that it's not there in original. So this is basically the companions of the right, that there's gonna be some spiritual guardian for them. To the companions of the left, there's gonna be ashab, some guardian, some companion for them. To the left, and I think this is somehow may be connected to this idea that there is two judges within the Zoroastrian scheme, that there is Sraosha and Mithra is dealing with some sort of a wicked one who are gonna basically thrown out to the hell, and Sraosha with the one who gonna be reborn. So there's like a different judgment scheme, and I think that is what is implied. Sabikun, and the foremost, and to the foremost will be the foremost, and by the foremost I think that some sort of a higher god is meant, or paradise, which is in more higher spiritual layers, like it's above, and that's why it's foremost. And further, Quran describes paradise for the Sabikun. For the like, I haven't I haven't studied in details, like comparing to other religious tradition and dictionaries, but not basically nothing controversial here. في جنة النعيم, in the gardens of bliss. So this is the correct translation. ثلاثة من الأولين. So I will just skip that, because it just basically gives this kind of idea what this type of people, in that case the foremost Sabikun, will be gifted with after they receive the judgment. So obviously I think the some parts would be just straight away mistranslated, but I just haven't studied in details, especially as you can see this eternal youth or eternal boys, Wildanon Mukhalidun, even though this Wildanon can also denounce singular, not necessarily plural boys. With cups, peaches, and that's very problematic, because as far as I know, it just appears once or twice in the Quran, this type of verbs, so they can be misused. But the general scheme that they would be rewarded with some fruits and some positive things, even though I myself very skeptical about this word, because it doesn't correspond with other Semitic languages, and so on. And that's the most controversial, Wahurunain, some sort of maidens with the gorgeous eyes. And why it's controversial? Because of the Christoph Luxemburg proposal, it's just mistranslation of some Syriac hymnology, where it could denounce some white grapes. And to be honest, it feeds the scheme, because the fruits are described like meat, which is strange from the Manichean perspective. But Laham, for example, can simply be translated as a food, not necessarily meat, like in Aramaic. And the virgin ladies. Here, what is striking that never recreation process is mentioned. They're just gonna be stabled in this paradismal state. Basically, they're gonna remain in this paradise. The only thing they're gonna hear salam salam or salaman salaman, which is fascinatingly like, at least for me, reminding this kind of Hindu mantra Shanti, Om Shanti Shanti, which means exactly the same thing, peace, peace. And after that, Quran starts describing what will happen to the people of the right. And this is repetition of the verb, which was already present in 56 verse 8. So you can see this kind of repetition. And now it starts to describe the pleasures of this type of people. Fisidrin, mahdudin, watalhin, mandudin. And here I'm just 100% like 100% sure that it's just fraudulent translation, because the Sadara doesn't correspond with other Semitic languages. And any kind of Arabic, South Arabic inscription, Safaitic, Dadaitic, Sabian, we have. Same with the Talaha. It's always correspond with it, like classical Hebrew and the Aramaic scheme. Sadara just means some rank, some elevated place. Talaha means the dew in Aramaic. Classical meaning is not attested in any of the West Semitic languages. So I'm very skeptical, because in the classical translation, they would basically say that they would be under the thorn and claw trees, and Sidron they would take from the Greek, that in Greek language there is a cedar denouncing this kind of cedar trees, and they would say that is denounced exactly the same. But the problem is, of course, this kind of words, which appears only once in the Quran, Maghdudin and Mamdudin. So it's dubious. Like, if you just simply check this up in the Aramaic, it wouldn't correspond, or in Hebrew. You can say that's some sort of a local development of the Arabic, but even in Arabic inscriptions, you won't find anything like that. Clusters of bananas, extended shade, flowing water, abundant fruits, and so on. And I just quoted some passages in Isaiah that almost certainly there is some connection with reincarnation. Why? Because of the next verses. This is falsely translated. Like, indeed, we have perfectly created their mates. This word is even not appeared. They even was afraid to put it in the brackets. But indeed, we have produced them in a new creation, basically. What does signify that we will produce them in a new form? Well, you can say that some new form doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be reincarnated. There's must be some sort of a new form in the paradismal state. But the problem is that classical translation refer this verse to this virgin ladies because of the next verse, which fraudulently ascribed to virgin ladies, in my sense, because this, we already said that this preposition fa in Arabic, it indicates the connectivity with the previous clause or the previous verse. And as you can see, it's falsely translated. And we made, well, correct translation must have this kind of particle, then, not and. And in Arabic would be wa, not the fa. So because previous like theme speaking about the people of the right, it talking about the people of the right, that this people of the right, we will produce them, the people of the right, into new forms. And that's like, well, that's very close to reincarnation. What is the reincarnation? When some divinity reproduces you into the other forms, whether it's like animals or plants or some maybe higher layers of universe, kind of seven heavens, because even in the heavens they have like different bodies overall in the Gnostic schools. Yeah, and Bakara is falsely translation as the virgins. In Arabic, it just denounced the young one, some firstborn or young person would be Bakir, Abkaran, and it corresponds with actually with Aramaic Bakara to be the first, to be ripe. So the ripened fruits often described with this Bakara in Aramaic. Uruban Atraban, and this is just the butchering of the text, how they translated it. Devoted and the equal in age. Uruban falsely translated as devoted, attached to the Arabic root Araba, which never indicates any kind of devotion. Araba just mean, like in classical Arabic, it means something very clear, like the clear speech. But in other Semitic languages, Arab may identify the sunset. For example, in Aramaic and in Hebrew, and actually the word Arab itself, the name of specific nation of the people, Arabs, is come from this actual root. And this kind of sunset identities make sense because Maghrib, for example, in Arabic, which translates as the west, and this kind of western parts of the caliphate back at the day, they were called Maghrib. Often the Africa or Ifriqiya and the Spain part, whilst it was the part of this kind of Islamic world, it is called Maghrib because of the West, obviously because it is the place where the sunset happens. And if you draw an analogy with the people, this was identified the old age. So translation would be old ones, actually, not the devoted. In anyhow, you can derive that from Arabu. And equal in age, and atraban. Atraban comes from the taraba. It is the verbal noun from the verb taraba, to dust something. And taraba is basically the dust overall in the Quran. Like, for example, khalaqa min turab, or khalaqna min turab, we created you from the dust. Falsely translated as equal in age, it just doesn't set up. Like, I don't know why they choose to translate it that way, but I suggest this is somehow connected with this whole idea of this virgin ladies, because they wanted to justify basically this big harems they had. We have met them young, old, and perished. That's why I would translate one, because turab basically means this kind of something decomposed, something spoiled, when the person decomposes to this particles in his grave. It's a very recurrent theme in the Quran when this kind of disbelieving people say that well, we're gonna be produced anew after we became this kind of turab, which means the dust and bones. And I'll skip the next verse as I haven't investigated it, but let's see actually what the Quran says about the people of the left. And this is again the repetition of the same verse which appeared before that: to the companions of the left, the companions of the left. Into the Samum or Samumin. Overall, in classical Arabic, it just denounced this kind of hot wind or poisonous wind. But I'm not sure, like, there is no connectivity. It may well be because it's very popular word even today. So, but as you can see, the next one is this Hamima or Hamimin, the hellish realm. So we see that Quran states that there is the three type of the people foremost, sabiqun, who are gonna be gifted or pleased with some sort of a paradismal state where there's gonna be this eternal voice, but it's questionable how you can translate it even in singular. Maybe there's some connection with the idea of the children of heaven, which, as far as I know, appears in some Qumranic material, but that's definitely for the next time. And the people of the right, who's like mediocre people, basically in the Zoroastrian scheme, who are gonna be judged but not thrown into the hell. They're gonna be reborn in some other creation, in some other form, as the Quran states, insha'atun or insha'un, which roughly translates to the form or thing, because shay in Arabic literally translated as a thing. So, and the people of the left, who are the wicked one and who are gonna be sent to this basically Hamima, which sounds very similar to what we have in a Manichean tradition with this Humama. Well, that's a little.
Within mainstream Islam, what's meant by the Himima?
It's just the hellish realm, basically, where it's a global hell. But it's problematic because it's either not explained or explained in the sense of the boiling water. Often it's translated like the boiling water. Let me
Yeah.
see.
So it's not really explained terribly well.
Yeah, in many cases, many like this kind of I would say apocalyptic terminology is not explained well at all. It's
Yeah.
just straight away guessing. Like this tree of Zakum, for example, just straight translated Zakum. Like, well, what Zakum means in Arabic? Nobody knows. But I myself
Yeah.
connected with Middle Persian, because in Middle Persian there's actual word Zaham, which means the harm. So this kind of Shajaratul Zakum could simply be translated as the tree of harmness or a tree of harm. And to be honest, there's a lot of Parthian terminology, especially in early surahs. And to the late surahs, this terminology, like, somehow it's more or less disappears, and what appears this influx of what we know as Ethiopic language or Ethiopic borrowings within the Quran. It's almost like they had some different materials, some Enochian tradition maybe, which written in Ethiopic and Ge'ez. And I recently found out that, for example, even Hanazar or Khanzir, which in Arabic roughly translated as the pig, and this is sort of a strict prohibition we have. Haram to alayhim, the damu maytatu wa lahmu khinzir, like prohibited for you is the blood, the dead one or dead meat, and this lahmul khinzir, flesh or meat of the swine, khinzir. But actually, in other Semitic languages, in like Aramaic, even in Ge'ez, even an inscription in South Arabian inscription, we have the pig is Khazir, not the Khanzir. And what is interesting that I found some Enochian tradition where which is written in Ge'ez in Ethiopic, and there's some sort of what is called apocalypse of animal tradition, where it's described as some sort of allegories between the animals and different type of peoples, nations, often team within the Tanakh itself, by the way. But what is interesting in one of the passages, the actual where this Hanazara appears, which obviously I think alludes to this Arabic or have some common word from maybe Proto-Arabic or something like that, which unites this both linguistic traditions. This Hanazara doesn't necessarily translate it as the pig, because actual word for the pig, which is used throughout the Ethiopic Bible, is already used in the passage. So I'm very skeptical after I found out that I'm very skeptical that Quran even states that this is the pig. And I tried to find something like some material about this Hanadra Enochian tradition. Most of the translators just skipped away the word, just translated Hanazra like it is, because they don't know. Obviously, some translate it as the swine because of the Arabic. They will just, oh, look, in Arabic, Hamzir means the swine, and they guess that it has some common roots in Arabic. But why do we assume that? Quran is much after than Enochian tradition. Enochian tradition's one of the oldest. All the Old Testament pseudo-epigrapha mostly consists of the book of Enoch, different books, which is fascinating to be honest, to witness this tradition even in Slavonic texts, in the Slavic languages. The oldest one, like the Glagolith, what is in Russian, Glagolitz or Glagolithic script. Even if we do compare it, like many scholars see this kind of parallels in script between Ge'ez, between Ethiopic and Glagolithic, like early Church Slavonic. So maybe it would explain us that there was some sort of a connection between the Slavic people and Aksumite or Ethiopic kingdom back at the day, which were very powerful. It was basically the third world state, like Titan state back at the day, besides the Roman and Persian empires, and the Chinese one later on. So yeah, was a little presentation, but sorry that it wasn't that well prepared. But next time we'll try something better. But yeah, there's also some Manichean kerygmas when the Quran actually gives us some sort what is called swearings. For example, wallahi in Arabic would be by the God. It wouldn't. You can translate it and the God, because wa is the connective particle, but usually translated as some sort of swearing and oath. And some Quran contains swearing not by the name of the God, but by the moon and by the sun, like wal kamar or washams, and that's very strange. Especially if we compare it to the other Christian tradition, you won't find anything like that. That some Eastern Christians or I don't know, Orthodox one, or even non-Orthodox monophysites would use something that it would be blasphemous to,
Hmm.
to swear not by the name of the God, but by the creation. And well, in Manicheanism, it makes sense because, well, in Manicheanism, it's actually the sort of a vehicles, the sun and moon. And I will quote, and this is from the Kefalaya. It's some sort of a mm, it's almost like a hadith tradition within Manichaeism, deeds and sayings of the Mani. It was found in the Coptic manuscripts in Egypt. Uh, the first is the filling up of the disk of its sheep, the sun, because its sheep has filled up every season, and shall not wane at all the way that the sheep of the moon mays. This continuous filling by which it's filled displays the mystery of the Father. And this mystery of the Father, well, in Arabic, there is the whole terminology for the mysteries or for the signs, which is called ayat. And in Quran, the sun and moon are described to be as the signs of God, or the mysteries or miracles of God. If you take this Coptic translation seriously. And I don't remember where, but there's some place in the Quran where there's identification of the sun and moons as being the ships or the vehicles, exactly like in this Coptic tradition, which was, as far as I know, pointed out by Moshe Gil. Yeah, that's another parallel. And I think there's even connectivity, but the whole idea of the identification of Islam with some Manichean offshoot may be problematic, and I'm not advocating for that. What am I advocating is that some Quranic materials undoubtedly have some like very strict parallels with the Manichean tradition, and it somehow need to be explained. I have the video about the Surah Abu Lahab, for example. From my perspective, it's all about this buff between the Mani and the Qardir, and Abu Lahab may well be the Qardir priest, who was definitely seen as like almost the Judas in the Christian tradition, who was responsible for the death of the Mani. But yeah, that's it for now. Because what I presented is the first time. It's not in any paper, I can guarantee. But for the audience who might be like interested about the connection between Manichaeism and Islam, I would recommend John Reeves, who is Manichaeologist, and he had some articles about not the parallels, but about the history of the development of Islamic dogmas, and then there is this connection with certain movements in Abbasid historiography, which be very similar to the Manichaeanism, and the descendants of these movements would be Nusayris or Alevis today. John Reeves, right? Also Daniel Beck. He's independent scholars, but he has an academia page and many different articles when he compares the Islamic eschatology with Zoroastrian one, and well, Manichaean one is Zoroastrian one too. And the Moshe Gil, he's just a like he's more biblical scholar, but he had some articles about the Hanifs, that it may be that this particular word is used to describe the Ibrahim Hanif, it became controversial because overall in other Semitic languages, Hanap and Pa became Fa in Arabic. It's just a phonetical change which occurs very often. Like, for example, in Aramaic, Parsis or the Persians became Farsis in Arabic. But Hanap means the pagan or Gentile overall. Within the Syriac, Aramaic, Hebrew, Ethiopic, it would be the same, which very strange. Why would the Quran says that Ibrahim was a pagan? But actually, as far as I know, there is one article of Moshe Gil that he brings up that some Syriac scholars use that to denounce the Manicheans as they were like pagans in a sense. And even today we can hear that Manicheans, Zoroastrian pagans, they believe in different gods, something like that. So there's might be a connection. But these three people I highly recommend: Moshe Gil, John Reeves, and Daniel Beck. And the most like the new articles is from Daniel Beck. It's research in the Quranic materials deeply.
Yeah, very good. And yeah, that's all very interesting. That's right. I haven't heard that before with Manichean parallels in the Quran. But
Yeah.
maybe here we'll get at least one comment here, if that's fine. I'm not sure what Portable Kimbora is saying. Hamima, the dovecote you can find in the Bible. I'm not familiar.
Yeah,
Um,
but I'll derive it from just home, from Hebrew home, which means to be hot. It's two in the Bible. Hamima, as far as I know, it's just different spelling, but phonetically it can change easily. This kind of different ha's, especially in Arabic, where there's like this light ha, glottal ha, and this rough ha. So yeah, but I think it just follows the overall scheme, which you can even find this Hamima in Mandic, as far as I know, in Mandean Aramaic, which denounce exactly the same, some hot place, and the hammam, this kind of bathhouse, Arabic or Turkic one. Uh, there's also association with this kind of smoke and boiling water. So maybe they just derive it from there, this classical interpretation of this word.
yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
And, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm not sure about the other stuff like samum or talha or fakiha. It's very dubious, but I haven't studied it deeply. I spent 5 times. I'm spending almost 1 hour for one word because you need to check up in every possible dictionary. But overall, it's just heavily mistranslated. Like sadara
Yeah.
and other Semitic languages denounced some rank or some status. In Arabic, it's suddenly translated as the tree, like cedar tree, because sadara is like the Greek sedera, and it's quite dubious why they would borrow from Greek. I myself very skeptical because all this kind of Greek borrowings, which we have, like Evangelion is from the like Injil from Evangelion. What else is also like Idris is from the Greek Esdras. It's more following the Greek scheme, but actually there's a lot of Aramaic stuff which sound exactly like that. So it might be borrowed from the Greek through the Aramaic. So yeah, a lot of stuff need to be translated, and this is just boring, and you just spend time into the
Yeah.
dictionaries and stuff.
Yeah. And I guess bad news is that the Huria,
Uh,
um, they're
Hurri,
yeah,
Hurrun Ain, as, but
yep,
I
they
was like so sure that this kind of virgin passage is attached to this Hurin and the Quran, but when I found out this whole virgin thing comes from this Apkarin or Apkaran, it just mistranslation. Bakara doesn't mean the virgin, like it's just young one. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is a virgin. And the next verse, like Orubun, Atraban, it's just straight away from the fantasies of some exegetes. Because I think there was like sort of a project. Some caliph loved to have multiple wives in his harem or harem, and this kind of forbidden part of the castle where this a lot of wives would gather together, and and that's it. Like if there is a practice, you need somehow to approve it by the legal code, and legal code by because there was Quran, and you need to just basically reinterpret the Quran and say, well, there is actually wives and virgin ladies. It's okay for the caliph to have it. It's in the Quran. Qala Rasulullah, like Prophet said so. How dare you question the Prophet? And I think that's just the origin of that. Maybe this Christian Luxembourg proposal makes sense, because before that I was highly critical and skeptical.
mhm,
When actually investigating the text of Arabic text, it's not that clear at all. Many words are just foreign, most probably Parthian or Ethiopic, which doesn't fit this kind of classic scheme of Arabic language, especially even this Khanzir stuff, because it's very like 4-letter root. It's dubious. It's almost like, if you will find, you find like mostly like 100 words in contemporary Arabic with a 4-letter roots, and original Arabic, like dirhams, for example. It's from drachmas, from the Greek, also 4-letter root, and it's mostly the borrowings when we have like this packed word, long word. Yeah.
all right, so here maybe let's see, we'll
Yeah.
wind down, but we'll pick up some. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or any comments, um,
Feel
put them
free to
in.
ask.
And then so here, portable Symbora clarifying. Hamam also means dove.
Yeah, in
So
Hebrew, you can denounce the dove, but it would be questionable why this racket one would be like sent into the dove if we like translated in Arabic. So maybe
yeah,
like some sort of anti-adoptionist stuff, like, because dove is also associated with
mhm,
adoptionist school. Many, for example, Nestorian crosses would, in China, for example, they would have this kind of dove at the top of the cross, flying to the ground, and
yeah,
but I don't know. I think the most probable is just either Manichean or straight away translation. Hamama would be some scorching hot place.
yeah, for sure. And I'm not familiar with this either. What do you think about
Rostam.
Rostam's parable?
I don't know, like, what do you mean by Rostam's? But I know that there's the whole Rostam Persian literature about this kind of heroic figure, almost Promethean one. Muslim
Rostam speaks to
envoys.
the Muslim envoys who may not even be Muslim.
Where did you get this? I would be first to read that kind of stuff. First time I see it. Muslim envoys. I know that Rostam is like this kind of mythological figure within Iranian epos, within the Shahnameh tradition. But is it actually in Shahnameh or what? First time I heard that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not familiar either. And then here we have Jason Sobek, Lord of the Four Corners. Thank you so much. Do
Yeah,
you see
hi,
any
Jason.
influence of the Manichean concept of the spiritual twin in Islam?
Well, I think sometimes this azwaj can be easily translated as the spiritual partner, not necessarily the physical partner. Even in some surahs you can see that clearly, but sometimes it's roughly physical, but it's just roughly translated as a pair and or spouse. And the bride could be physical and bride could be divine bride. So like yeah, I think there's strong parallel, especially in early surahs when there is not so clear, because in Medinan surahs there's this kind of influx of the legalistic or normative verses in the Quran. It's not many, by the way, but still, like in Surah Mu'minun, for example, where it's most probably about this kind of monk lifestyle, how he should perform his like his way or acting in the community. But yeah, I think there is the connection. If you ask me, because where would they get this kind of stuff? Why would not use the I don't know sahibatu or something like that in Arabic? Ankahu, for example, nikah means the marriage in the Quranic sense, but why use azwaj like the pair spouse? Maybe back in the day there were no such institution even organized yet. That would be just some sort of like natural agreement. And there's the whole controversy about the contract, whether it's obligatory or not, because Shias, for example, they don't believe that, at least some Shia traditions, they do not believe that contract is obligatory, like it's in the Sunnism, for example. Like you must have this contract which approved by specific qadi, specific judge, for the marriage to be valid. Hope I am. And by the way, this Sobek, he said there was a like some sort of a podcast, and I actually checked up, but I couldn't find out any. So if you could point out, because you said there was discussion with David Litva you made.
Yeah. I think it's coming up. I subscribed to Jason's channel. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't see one either, so maybe it's upcoming.
Yeah.
And then here, portable Simbora before the Battle of Qadisiyah. Yeah,
Before the Battle of Qadisiyah.
where we're talking about.
It's very vague
Muslim.
how you describe it. Like, do you mean the Hadith tradition, or do you mean some Persian stuff? I'm just not familiar with that. It's what you quoted, that Muslims which Maybe not well be a Muslims, but some Zoroastrians. Even the Salman figure. Oh, okay. I see.
And so I guess it's going to be on Litwa's channel, not. So
Oh,
Litwa's first. Litwa's channel next week, and then after, on Jason's
okay.
channel.
See. Yeah, but I started to reading actually because there was some try to find out some Quranic material, and David Litva pop up suddenly because of the demiurge, the curse of the demiurge, how
Yeah.
the concept of the curse used in the Quran too. So it's interesting. In his like book Evil Creator, there's the chapter for this.
Yeah. And it's interesting how like he talks about, Gnosticism isn't the best word to describe this stuff, right?
Yeah,
Because I mean, really
absolutely.
any religion, if you define Gnosticism broadly enough, it's all Gnostic, right?
Yeah.
Like
It's even orthodoxy would be Gnostic in that
100%.
sense. Like in Epistle of Barnabas, which was the part of the Bible, at least from the oldest codexes we have, but was removed later on because of some Zoroastrian flavor to it. There is like the two ways, and the one way is the ways of angel of gods, and other the ways of demons of Satan, and like we attain the gnosis through the Abraham, and like what the hell is that? And it's clearly Judaizing material in a sense when they try to like, look, the Old Testament prophets are good ones. Don't dare to to say some bad things about them. But yeah, this word just means some like knowing in a sense of personal knowledge, and even the whole idea that the Martian himself was agnostic, he wasn't Gnostic in terms of like Neoplatonism, ideas that there is some sort of higher spiritual gnosis. He's most likely was a sola fide guy, that you must just have this faith and the hardcore asceticism. That's why the whole Encrotite community later on would be born out of the Martianism, like the Misalians, for example, which many connects with the Manicheans too, because Manicheans are also hardcore ascetics, and it's very similar in sounding as Musallin in Arabic, the ones who praise. And this is the Syriac word why we have this title, Misalians, which literally translate the one who prays from Syriac. Yeah, and later on, this kind of development of Bogomilism and Paulicianism in Armenia and the Bosnian Church. I wouldn't dare to call them Gnostic in the sense of Neoplatonist or something like Hermetic tradition, or yeah, it's just it's like Zindiq in the Arabic, how it's used. Originally it was denouncing the Manicheans, but later on, like every heretic would be like Zindiq, something like that. Like every non-Sunni basically is Zindiq, and quite big of a scope. Like you can have the Unitarian Zindiqs, you can have the dualist Zindiqs, you can have all very different philosophical schools within one umbrella term, which is selectively used by some later orthodox bureaucracy within the church corporation. So,
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. All right. Here. Okay, we'll do one more question, then we'll head out maybe. Jason, Lord of the Four, Sobek, Lord of the Four Corners. Have you read Jason de Bedun's book, The Manichean Body?
Body. No. I read his articles and I'm using his translation or reconstruction of Marcion Gospel, but I haven't read the book. This Manichean Body is this title, I suppose, but no, I haven't read it, unfortunately. But his some materials and this Manichaeika, he's like a redactor for the several institutions when they would post out this kind of compilation of articles and very good stuff about the Manichaeanism. Yeah, it's in a sense a way like if you would study Marcionism or Manichaeanism, like you always gonna be studying the whole stuff. Like anyhow, you won't skip the Marcion if you study Manichaeanism, and otherwise you won't skip the Mani teaching with the Marcion, because this tradition lived basically side by side back at the day. It's in same geographical places, so it's inevitably the you study in a broader scheme all these movements, Gnostic movements, rather East Christians. I prefer this type of a title, just East Christianities, which were many and different.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we got that from Dr. Litwa, right? The Christianities.
Yeah, found Christianities.
Yeah.
It's a good way to put it, because well, that's how it is. It was just different Christian tradition, which may have or may not have any like apostolic succession, but even the classical Orthodox argument about the apostolic succession, like, come on, we don't have any document from the first century. The only thing we have, the Testimonium Flavianum, and it's like everybody like fighting for that, like it's just the last cause. You like, no. And I myself sometimes like amazed that it's not some Catholics who defend that, like Bart Ehrman, for example. Like he would like beat the hell out of you if you deny that there's historicity to Jesus figure. Like, it's dogmatic in a sense. Like, what the hell? But yeah, maybe there's like the Protestant past of the Bart Ehrman is still echoing in his mind, and he want to defend it. But for me, like the only thing, and that one thing is very dubious, because even the Origin, who who quoting from that book but never mentioned Jesus, like what? And that would be the thing to mention if you're an Origin. Yeah, but even in terms of the Quran, it's not that clear. I recently found out the article about how it was called. I have it in my can't find it, unfortunately, but it was about the root kafara and about the ideological manipulation and codicology of the Quran, where but he basically, and this is from I just found out, from Eduard Galès. He have this kind of comparison table within the manuscripts and different aspects which is not present in some manuscripts of the Quran. So it's not that clear too when we just look. I mean, it's much more preserved than the Christian tradition, at least if we really believe that Muhammad was a historical person. But in terms of consistency of the codexes, is not that clear at all. Like, And of course, the question of the ahruf and qira'at, that there's different way you can read the text in the Hebrew. I meant in Arabic without the doting system. But the David Litwell, he's amazing because he stresses the fact that in Greek there's ambiguity too sometimes, and well, that's definitely the case even in the Pauline epistles. So yeah, you just need to be more humble when you approach these texts, not to be dogmatic.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we'll leave it there, and we'll say, stay tuned, same channel.
Yeah,
Next
we'll
week.
just do something anew next time, as always.
Yeah.
Maybe some new parallels I will find, but hopefully. Maybe we'll discuss this Hanif question because you can talk about it. You can bring up many material for that because it's just picked up by the evangelists and stuff, by the kind of Christian apologists. Like, Quran is just pagan one religion or something like that. So.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah.
And have an awesome day.
Have a nice day.